Hello, you guys, and welcome back to another special episode. So today we have Rosa again. You guys met her in our first episode, but today we're going to be doing a part 2. So you guys already know who I am, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit about who she is and what she does. So,
hello everyone. My name is Rosa Valentina. I'm a photographer. I have my photography business, and I'm also recently a personal banker, so yay, ching ching. And I'm a mom to a 4-year-old daughter, so I have my hands full, and I love working out. I love being disciplined. I love self-development, business development, all of that. That's my cup of tea.
And how long have you been a photographer for?
I've been a photographer since 2018, so that's like 6 years now. And in that time, I have taken some pauses where I stopped doing it for a bit and then just had to restart, but 6 years in total.
Like, what made you want to go ahead and start your own business?
Funny story. I never meant to start a photography business, but it was around this time last year where I was 21 and my 22nd birthday was coming up, and I just started reevaluating everything and being like, are my choices really taking me where I want to go? Like, am I just wasting my time? Am I making my life as meaningful as I can? And that got me to go into the more entrepreneurship side, where I started honing in more on self-development, because as a person, I've always been into self-development. Ever since I was like 12, I started realizing like you can't be a victim of your emotions. You have to be in control. So ever since I was 12, I've always been into self-development, reading self-help books, being into business. But there's cycles to everything. So when I was 21, being 21, I was in my party era. I wanted to explore the world, see what was out there, go partying with my friends.
Yeah.
But that shortly came to an end where I'm like, this can't be all there is. Like, I need to get back on it, get back on my discipline and make my life meaningful. So I started again into self-development, and that made me first start a online clothing business with the Shopify, since that was the rage.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that. What was your clothing brand about?
It was more of like jewelry and women's clothing, and that was just so slow, where I was learning how to even set up the website and everything. It was a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes before you even launch anything. But that didn't end up working out because it was kind of like frustrated plans where that wasn't what was meant to be. And that's the thing too, where in business, it's not just material things, it's what God wants you to do and what's best for you. And when plans aren't working out, yes, you have to be disciplined and not give up, but then there's also another side of the coin where you have to decide, is this really in my best interest? Is there another road that maybe God is leading me towards? So that's where I just stopped it, and I needed extra money. So I remembered I had my camera all packed up, collecting dust. So I picked it back up and I started promoting it, and I really needed money. So I'm like, why not? It's a skill I have. And from that, it made me go into the rabbit hole of finding my passion again, doing what I loved, and deciding to do it full time again.
Yeah. Well, why did you even have the camera to begin with? Or how did you even have a camera?
Yeah, so when I was 17, 6 years ago, is that? Yeah. When I was 17, I had a friend, and she was graduating early. So she needed senior photos, and everything was last minute. And she's my best friend. Her name is Michelle, and she's also a Pisces.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
And so she didn't have anybody to help her. So I knew some people at the time that they were doing a business and whatnot. So they had a camera, and I asked to borrow theirs. And that's actually how I started doing photography. Like, let me just be a good friend and help you out. It shouldn't be that hard. And so people started seeing my work. They're like, oh, can you take my pictures too? And when people started asking me, I wasn't going to keep on borrowing somebody's camera, so I looked on Facebook Marketplace and
Smart.
I bought a camera. Yeah, it was $500, and with that camera, it lasted me so long. I still have it actually. It's at home, and I just picked that one back up and started using it to actually charge money this time.
Wow, that's awesome, because one thing that she said is that she was investing in herself, and that's something my boyfriend always tells me, and like he always says, like it's so important to invest in your business, it's so important to invest in yourself. And that's one thing that I love about you, is that like ever since I met her, like she's not afraid to, just take the risk and change right away. And I think for so many people, like change happens so slowly. I know with myself, like there's certain things where we tend to procrastinate, or we tend to push it off, or we tend to say like, tomorrow or whatever. But I love that you've always been like so fast, and you're like, oh, if I want something, like let me just go get it. And I love that. But was
I
there?
have not always been that way though.
Yeah.
I have not. That's actually something I've learned to develop.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you, like, was there anybody like that was pushing you, or that you learned this from, or like how did you even like develop that thing in yourself that told you from 12 years old, like, I want to self-develop? Because most kids don't think like that, I would say,
Yeah. So this is going into some deep territory, and this might be TMI, but sit down for the ride. So I had a very rough childhood. My parents got divorced when I was young, and I went through some really hard experiences, and some of that included sexual abuse and going through eating disorders in the aftermath, where you're, first of all, developing, you're going through hormonal changes during puberty, and you add a really rough background to that mix, it's really hard to cope. So I struggled with an eating disorder. I used to cut myself, and I was in a really dark spot mentally where I didn't want to live anymore. And there comes a point where you either keep on being the victim or you try looking for a way out. And I'm really grateful that I had God always by my side, where I've always been a big believer, and not necessarily religiously, but I've always had a big faith in God. And there was a point where I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, either show me you're real, or I don't know. So I was looking for a sign, and when I prayed like that, it felt like I finally got a breakthrough. And in that moment, when I was 12 years old, I kind of got the spirit to keep on living, where, yeah, you've been through this, but I'm with you, and you will get through this. And that led me to have, because it's, you get what you're looking for. So if you're looking for the light, you will find the light. So when I was going through that really dark spot where I didn't want to keep on going, and I made that prayer, a few days later, I was on an airplane, actually from Phoenix back to Des Moines, Iowa, where I used to live, and I was 12, flying by myself, and there was a lady that sat next to me, and she was reading a Tony Robbins book.
Oh, wow.
Awaken the Giant Within.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So I asked her, and she showed me, and when I got back home to my Barnes & Noble, and I started reading it, and I just love Tony Robbins and all of the information he shares with managing your emotions, not being a victim of it, turning things around, and just cultivating more positive emotions, controlling the way you think, and that if something doesn't go my way, what can I learn from this, changing the way you think. And in middle school, I actually became known as like just such a positive person, because other kids my age would be like, why are you always so happy? But they just didn't
that
know.
is a thing. That is a thing.
Yeah, like they just didn't imagine that I had been through so much. But from that moment, I just started self-developing and falling in love with realizing my emotions and being able to manage them properly.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing, because I know that's definitely not easy. But going back to that, I mean, that's a whole topic. I feel like I didn't even learn about managing your emotions until I got to college, because, when I was younger, my sister got diagnosed as bipolar, and, coming from a Hispanic family and like a Latina family, we just didn't understand what a mental disorder was. And, even like looking back, you know, when you were younger, my brothers would just make fun of her and be like, oh, well, she's crazy, she's crazy. Just like looking back, like we had to apologize to her because we were like, oh, we didn't know, you know, so much about mental disorders, or we didn't know so much about like mental illnesses until even I got to college. And that's when I started educating my family more. And I had to constantly educate them because they didn't grow up with that. They didn't grow up believing in therapy or any of that. And so, you know, my sister, we really had to like apologize to her. But it just goes to show that sometimes when you don't grow up around something, or, you know, when your family doesn't know about something, I feel like for me, my purpose has been in how can I, everything that I'm learning, how can I instill it back to my family and show them, you know, just things that I've learned along the way. So I'm so glad that you said that, because again, when I went to college for social work, and that was when I started learning about like managing your emotions, and like you said, not being a victim of your state or where you are at. Because I think I can only speak for my family, but my family if something doesn't go right, they're like, oh, well, life just sucks, and, you know, this is my forever state. And like you said, like they would always think I would one, because I would always be so happy, or I would be like, oh, well, let's find the optimistic side, or how can we change this and stuff like that. And then you grow up thinking like, okay, maybe I'm just weird, or maybe I'm just crazy. And like you said, until you start attracting those people that are on the same vibe as you, or just on the same frequency as you, because it really is real. You know, you attract whatever you're putting out there.
Exactly.
But, and like going back to that topic, like how we met. So we actually met because we met at my old job, and she came to an event, and that's how we met, you know. And I was kind of just like networking with people in the room, and, you know, I don't even know if I think I asked you like where you were coming from or something like that. And then I found out she was Latina and Hispanic, and I was like, oh, even better. But I think that around that time, going back to what you said, I was learning how to, you know, just really look at my life and analyze like what was I putting out there, what was I attracting. Because I think for a long time, I don't know if I've ever told you this, like I didn't think I knew how to be a friend, and I had to like learn that with experience. And I think when I met you, I was kind of like burnt out, because, you know, you spend so much time in the business, and you spend so much time on, like you said, just hustling and kind of making your business better, that you forget about other things. And so around that time when I joined this company, I was analyzing myself and like, you know, looking at, you know, what is actually going to make me better. You know, are the friends around me making me better? Are they forcing me to grow? And that was when I had to end a lot of friendships and a lot of relationships that were not helping me grow. But I feel like I almost manifested you, because I was like manifesting just like someone that was on the same emotional intelligence as me, and just even better than I. And I feel like you came in the picture, and you're so disciplined, and you motivate me, and you inspire me so much every day. What do you feel like were like the biggest habits or just things that you started implementing in your everyday life to get you closer to your goals, or just get you closer to, you know, a life that you're proud of? Because I think for a lot of people, like I said, they live in that victim mentality or that victim state, and they feel like there's too many things around them that are going bad, that they're like, oh, well, it's just not even worth it to change.
And the reason I've been able to change and be so disciplined, the number one thing I can think of is having a vision. Because when you have a vision and you get clear on what it is exactly that you want and where you want your life to go, that's where discipline is basically taking the route to get to where you want to go. Because a lot of people unfortunately don't have a vision. Like they have like the house with the white picket in front, and they just accept the status quo of what their life should be like, or ultimately a vague picture of what life is, instead of them taking accountability for what they want in their life. And when you have a vision, when you wake up and you know what you're working towards, your discipline is that framework to get there. For example, when I was 21 and I started reflecting, this party life is not it. It's not what I want to keep doing for years down the road. My time is valuable. So having that vision where, one, I wanted to get out of debt, I needed to make extra money. I can't just rely on one job. I can't put all the eggs in one basket. I need another income stream. And also, what do I want long term? Do I want to die all crusty and dusty in this job? No. So you have to get clear about what you want. And as terms of fitness, being very clear about what you want to be, because working out and eating healthy isn't going to cut it if you get clear about, maybe I want to be 15% body fat, maybe I want to lose 10 pounds. But if you're just doing it to do it, your discipline is not going to hold up. So for example, you have to build that framework of what it is that you want, and sometimes you have to be real with yourself too about, am I doing what others are expecting? Vision also backed up with it, even if it doesn't align with what anybody else in my social circle does. Because with discipline especially, the truth of it is, they'll go to the gym maybe 5 times a day. People will be like, oh wow, you're so disciplined. But working out every single day, doing the tasks that you say you're going to do day in and day out, not people have that. But when you have a clear vision, and even when it's a vision that's so big that just the White House with the picket fence, you actually have a vision of what you would like your life to be, and you're aiming for the stars, having that discipline, you just can't give up, because you know where you're going, and you know that if you don't follow that discipline, you're the one holding yourself back from where you want to be. So having that vision is the first step to even having any form of discipline.
Oof, you just said a mouthful, but that is so, so true. And I think that was something I kind of had to like learn and develop over time, is that, you know, especially when you're an entrepreneur or you start hitting your goals and you start achieving them, I'm not gonna lie, there is gonna come a point where you're gonna get comfortable, and you're gonna be making the money that you want, you're gonna be hitting your goals, and then you're gonna be like, you know, I already made it. And that's the most dangerous state to be in, because I can definitely admit that, you know, once my business started generating more money, I kind of got comfortable. I'm like, okay, well, I already hit my goals, because that was my main aspiration, to, like you said, pay off debt and make more money within my business. But then I had to remember, like, you know, what is the bigger vision? You know, just because my family wasn't capable of it and I broke that generational curse and I made it, it's not an excuse to stay comfortable. And I think that that's one thing that I love about us, is that we never stay comfortable. We're just like, okay, what's next? What's the bigger picture? And like I said, Rosa just inspires me so, so much, because you have like really good discipline. But I think that you've even inspired me to be more disciplined to another level, because I know that when it comes to discipline, I definitely struggle with it. Maybe fitness, or when it comes to, you know, just like little things within my business, within my business, like, you know, for example, like little things with like the admin stuff. Like I was telling my boyfriend that it's not always the most fun. But like I said, once you start surrounding yourself around those people that have actually attain goals that maybe you haven't, or that are on higher levels than you, it just inspires you to keep going. But like you said, you have to do it for yourself, because if you're doing it for anybody else, it's just not going to last. And that was just one thing that I learned this year, is, you know, learning how to trust yourself, and then learning how to just keep going and keep your word to yourself. Because like I said, like you said, like a lot of people don't have discipline, and sometimes you might do things because you're like, oh, it's good enough, or, you know, I did something that most people can't, but that's not enough. Like, you have to go above and beyond and just be better than who you were yesterday. But but now, on this entrepreneurship journey, I would love for you to tell them a little bit more about what you do within your business, because I know we kind of got off on a tangent, but yeah, tell them a little bit like what you do within your business and what you specialize in.
So within my business, primarily I'm a photographer, and just recently I started going more into the videography side to be able to better help my other customers that have businesses, entrepreneurs, business owners, and people that just want to build their brand in general. So I'm a creative director, just like we were saying, where in photo shoots, or when a customer comes up to me and I ask them, what vision do you have? That's a key word, I guess. What vision do you have for your photos or your project? And they'll tell me, oh, I kind of want them like this.